Fala galera, tudo bem? Eu sou o Eraldo Agostinho e você está no Agostinho Talk. Aqui a gente conversa com músicos de verdade e sabe histórias de bastidores incríveis. Se você já gosta desse conteúdo, já vai se inscrevendo, compartilhando aí no Instagram, no YouTube, beleza galera? Então vamos para a nossa entrevista. E hoje nós estamos com Carlsen, o vocalista da banda Bloodgood. Fica comigo!
Eraldo, how are you? It's good to see you. Hey, listen, I just want to say hello to everybody. My name is Carlsen, former lead singer of Bloodgood, and now I do solo projects, and I'm excited to be on the show today.
Les, de início eu já agradeço sua grande participação aqui. É uma honra para o Agostinho Music receber você. Mas me diz aí, como é que foi o começo da história do Bloodgood? Como é que foi o início da trajetória?
So, how did Bloodgood first begin? It was back in 1984, I think, when we first got together, Michael and I. We basically started conversation on a phone, and then I met him in person. And we met him and J.T. Taylor and I, and we talked about the concept that Michael had. He wanted to do Christian music or Christian lyrics to heavy metal songs. And I said, Michael, let's just do originals. And so that's how it started. And from there, we started to rehearse, we started to pray, and that's it. Just forget it.
Cara, o que te levou a usar o heavy metal como forma de levar a mensagem cristã?
My motivation to do metal really came from my son, who was 18 at the time, and he was totally into secular metal, and of course, he didn't know Jesus. But when I met the Lord, my eyes were open to those album covers and the content of the secular heavy metal and what they were saying. And I felt moved to put together a band that was heavy metal and had Christian lyrics. It just so happened that Michael was doing the same thing at the same time, and then we met, and here we are, all these years later.
No início da banda, você sofreu resistência por cantar metal cristão?
In the early days, there were no Christian metal bands. Stryper had just come out, and the idea of Christian heavy metal was so odd and repulsive to Christians. So there was a lot of kickback, and they picketed our shows. They thought we were of the devil. And but we just kept going because we knew that God was calling us to do this. And so, as you know, 40 years later, there's a lot of those people that have changed their minds, and a lot of the young folks who were watching us back those days have become pastors, and churches have come out of this whole movement. So, yeah, there was a lot of opposition.
Como foi trabalhar com guitarristas de grande calibre, como Paul Jackson, David Zaffiro e Oz Fox?
You know, I had a real honor and a privilege to work with a guitar player like David Zaffiro. And then after David left, I had this incredible guitar player, Paul Jackson, that came in. And then as Paul was in the band later on, and finally with the last album, Dangerously Close, Oz Fox was also working with me. And those three guitar players are so, in their own right, very original and outside the box. David was totally out there, and he always came up with something that was just, I never thought of that kind of thing. Paul, so smooth and so deep in his delivery. His music that he would play oftentimes inspired me to write songs with him, and I did a lot of co-writing with Paul. And then when Oz came along, I wrote a lot of songs with Oz as well. And just, I felt kind of lucky or blessed, I guess, to have that caliber of player in my life making the music that we made together. So I'm so thankful for those guys. And we're all really good friends.
Sua voz é inconfundível. Como você desenvolveu o seu estilo vocal?
Yeah, my style was originally English rock, and I was into Beatles and Rolling Stones. And then I got into James Brown and Wilson Pickett, and then Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. And so I kind of developed it over the years, doing cover songs. I think Rod Stewart was an influence. But then when I got saved and I was going to go from pop and rhythm and blues music, I had to do metal, and I'd never done metal. So I listened to Ronnie James Dio for one or two songs, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to come up with my own thing. And at the Bloodgood rehearsals, I developed that voice, just thinking heavy metal and the high screams and the vibrato and all that. I just kind of listened enough to create my own style, and I'm glad I did.
Que cantores influenciaram a sua maneira de cantar?
I think the singers that influenced me the most in the beginning was probably Elvis Presley. I'm that old, yes. Just his style and his showmanship and his fantastic rock voice. He was probably the first. And then, of course, the Beatles. John Lennon was a real strong influence in the early days. And then, Mick Jagger. But like I said, the evolution of my voice came about by going through black rhythm and blues, hard, heavy rockers, Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant was another, sing high, and then I just did a lot of pop music for years and years and years, and developed my metal voice when I met Michael Bloodgood and said, I got to do metal. So that's what happened.
Como você cuida da sua voz atualmente?
The thing that I do to keep my voice right where I want it is when I wake up in the morning, I go out and I've got some shard glass and I just gargle with it, and it just keeps the rasp going. I don't swallow, though, and don't try that at home.
Você é autodidata ou chegou a fazer algumas aulinhas de canto?
I am self-taught. I used to, when I'd get home from high school in the afternoon, I would just listen to records over and over and over. And I would just try to be like the singers that I was listening to, which I've already mentioned. But later on, after I'd been a professional, had an album out or two, and been in hair for 2.5 years, and then I started doing clubs, I went to a vocal coach in Seattle. His name is Maestro David Kyle. He's the same coach that Jeff Tate had from Queensryche. And I took 4 years of lessons from him because I wanted an invincible voice so that when I worked clubs 6 nights a week, when I woke up in the morning, I could actually say hello if the phone rang. Whereas before I met Maestro, I couldn't talk for the first hour after I woke up. But he's the one that really made me strong, and thank God for Maestro David Kyle.
Como sua fé em Jesus influencia nas suas decisões, tanto na vida como na música?
When I met Jesus, my entire life changed. I didn't care to sing anymore. I had no desire to be a rock and roll dude. My goal then became just to be a disciple of Christ, to read the Word and to be like Him. And so I kind of gave it up, actually, and I started working roofing houses, and I just got out of show business altogether because I felt sort of embarrassed by what I'd done in the years prior to knowing Jesus. But after you meet the King of Kings, there is no turning back. And I would have to say I've never been the same. Michael wrote that song, but I've never been the same since I met Christ Jesus. And if you haven't met him, you should.
Try to rise
your thoughts. You are brothers, he's the Messiah.
Tem alguma música do Bloodgood que tem um significado especial para você? Por quê?
Out of all the Bloodgood songs, if I was to pick one, even though I think they're all special and I love them like my children kind of thing, the one special one that I feel that God gave me was The Messiah, about taking the body of Jesus off the cross. The emotion, that does to me and the people that listen to it. It's simply from God, and I'm so grateful that he allowed me to write a song like that, to have that perspective. You know, he gives me ideas for lyrics, and through reading his word, I think that's where I have this ability to just flow because of him, letting him flow through me. And I don't worry about the kind of lyrics that I come up with, because I'm sure that he's going to say, this is it for you, Les, because I want people to know my son. And talking about the Messiah coming off the cross, that was, I'm so grateful that he allowed me to write that and sing it so that all of you could hear it.
Que legado Michael Bloodgood deixou na banda?
Yeah, the legacy that Michael left. First of all, the band bore his name, Bloodgood. It's a perfect heavy metal name. But the legacy that Michael really had was his love for Jesus. He was a pastor. He was a man of God. He was a man that prayed and offered just, a real solid place for all of us within the group. He was just a great friend to all of us. My best friend. And his legacy lives on right now in this podcast and in the music that is still out there, that is available. And there's that movie, Trenches of Rock, that really tells the story of Bloodgood, that I'm so happy that Michael's son, Paul, Michael Bloodgood, did that film so that you all can watch it and kind of get a real solid insight as to what was going on in the early days of Bloodgood. So yeah, Michael's legacy, it'll go on as long as there's music.
Como você vê o metal cristão hoje comparado aos anos 80 e 90?
Comparing Christian metal from the 80s to Christian metal in the 90s, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, if you're listening to 80s and 90s stuff, one of the things that happened in the early days, everything was analog. The first album was analog. Maybe the second album was analog as well. And then digital came in, CDs started to come in, so that the sounds became digital as opposed to analog. But the songwriting also just evolved, and, it just changed. I mean, as things do. Because there's a certain sound or whatever. But I think the message is the same. So the cool thing about Christian music, especially I think in metal, is that we're delivering messages that are timeless. We're not singing about girls, 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 or, where you can go, well, that was the certain time. With Bloodgood and many of the other bands, we were literally speaking the Word of God, which never grows old. It's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So Bloodgood music will always be current, no matter whether it's the 80s, the 90s, or up into the 2026, whatever. Because Jesus is the same and his message is the same. And so Christian metal evolves, but the message is the same.
Qual foi o álbum mais difícil de gravar?
Okay, so the most difficult album, I would say, would be Dangerously Close. The reason, I think, is because we had like 22 years off, and we had all pretty much gone our separate ways, and then we're coming back together to do an album. So because of the time span, there were so many different directions that we all went into. So when we came back together, we were bringing influences and just newfound chops and everything. So we were just kind of learning how to dance together again. And but it was difficult in the sense that, I mean, we were all bringing things in, and it was just trying to, we weren't really rehearsing together. We were kind of doing the Logic thing or the Pro Tools thing where you'd write together. Then we went into the studio and finally did the basics. I mean, it wasn't difficult, but it was a little bit harder because it was 22 years later. However, everybody still had their chops and they were ready to rock. So it was one of my favorite albums, though, by the way.
Como você se sente vendo que as músicas do Bloodgood continuam tocando as pessoas depois de tantos anos de carreira?
I was just in Germany a few months ago and touring my new music and some Bloodgood stuff. And to see the people that were, and to hear the testimonies of the people that grew up on Bloodgood, it's emotional. To be rejected in the beginning and then to find out that all these years later, there were so many hundreds of thousands of people that became Bloodgood fans because of the lyric content and holding Jesus high in our music. So, I mean, we actually got to see our prayers come to fruition, and there's people all over the world that still enjoy the Bloodgood music and the message of Christ Jesus in it. So yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised, but I'm I'm just grateful, just even to be on your show and to be able to come to South America and sing more Bloodgood stuff live. Can't wait.
Leis, você já viveu algum momento que você sentiu claramente a ação de Deus durante um show?
So there was a very memorable time when we were in Ireland where God showed up, and he showed up at the right time for me because this concert, we were in Dublin, Ireland, or Belfast, I think it was. Yeah, Belfast. And, that's when the Catholics and the Protestants back in the 80s, there was a lot of violence between, I guess, religious gangs or whatever. And it was kind of dangerous there. And when we came in, the security had to look under the bus for bombs. I mean, it was a very violent sort of place. And when Bloodgood came on to perform, it wasn't really a very friendly welcome. They were kind of laughing at us and booing us and stuff. And somebody threw a big wad of roll of toilet paper and hit me right in the chest. And this was a crowd that was very hostile. And so it was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. And they were trying to get up on the stage. They were trying to get on the stage and just do stage diving. And they just want to disrupt us really, really bad. And I'd never been in a situation like that. So I began to pray, Lord, what am I going to do with this? This is bigger than me, and I don't know what to say. But during the time, it was the Summer Olympics. And so the Lord just gave me this idea, hey, this guy finally gets on the stage and he dives into the crowd and everybody laughs and it's like they're mocking us and everything. And I stepped up to the mic and I said, okay. So he finally made his stage dive, but in the spirit of the Olympics, I have to rate that dive. And you know what? That dive was about a 6. And the whole audience laughed. And from that point on, they changed their mind and they loved us. And the people that were down front trying to get on the stage and flipping us off, we talked to them after the concert and we led them to Jesus. Now that was when God showed up. During the Detonation tour, when we were back in the Midwest and around the Chicago area, and we did Cornerstone, and we came there to Cornerstone, and it was like overwhelming. I mean, people were just, we couldn't even walk 10 feet without being stopped with people that wanted to talk to us. The popularity of the band had gotten so huge. And we were headlining Cornerstone that year. And that was really cool. But that's not the great story. The great story is that after that, our next gig was in New Jersey. And it was this humble promoter that had asked us to play in his little street ministry warehouse or whatever it was. But it was just like a little small storefront. And it was in really a bad part of town. And there were a lot of homeless people. And it was like a place where they'd come and they would get fed. And so I was really excited to do that gig, because it was more real. It was humble. It was small, but it was powerful. But there was a problem. I had laryngitis. Now, I never ever got sick out there on the road, but this particular time, I couldn't even speak. And I was so, I went to the Lord and I said, Lord, I have to be able to sing. This promoter is doing this, to share the gospel, and I can't even sing. And so when we prayed, I couldn't even pray. I mean, I'm just telling the story now. I had no voice. But I just said, you know what? I'm going to go on. I'm going to grab my microphone, and I'm going to do what I do. And I don't know what's going to come out. I've prayed that God will give me my voice. And when I took the stage, grabbed the mic, I am serious. I think I sang better than I ever did in my life. And I preached, and it was God's presence in the room and the power of God. And it was like, yeah. And when it was over, I had no voice. He's miraculous.
Fale sobre a incrível fusão do teatro mais música que vocês fizeram no DVD Bloodgood Rock Theater.
Okay, I loved rock theater. Because of my background in Hair, when I was like 20 years old, I auditioned for the Broadway musical Hair, and I played Claude Hooper-Bukowski in the show and toured with that show for 2.5 years. That's where I met my lovely wife, Joyce, and we've been together ever since. But I always had this desire to do something theatrical with heavy metal. And of course, right from the get-go, we were doing things on stage that involved acting and choreography because we thought it would give it that special punch in the gut to the listener and to the person that was watching or the people that were watching. So when we did rock theater, we actually had an opportunity in a big church there that had a stage, and we kind of sat down and created a rock opera around Bloodgood music. And there were volunteers that did dancing, and it was just an enormous production, but it was a spirit-filled production. And it was, again, inspired by the Lord himself, because we would pray, we would ask for certain choreographies or how we would stage or how we would light the certain scenes and that sort of thing. But it was really community that put that together, spearheaded by Bloodgood, the band, myself, my wife, Marilyn, Michael, and that was how it happened.
Existe algum plano para o Bloodgood no futuro?
No future plans other than, 40th annual releases of albums and that sort of thing. But no Bloodgood plans because there's no Michael Bloodgood. So anything that comes out would be something that is archived or whatever. But that's a matter that hasn't been sorted out. Okay, but I would say no. There's not going to be a Bloodgood again. But if somebody wants to put together a tribute band for Bloodgood, then go for it, because Michael would be honored by it, and I got no problem with it, so do it.
Você pensa em lançar um disco solo?
Yes, I do plan to release solo material. As a matter of fact, there they are. The first one was He's Coming, that came out in 2022, and the guitar player roster on that album was Paul Jackson, Craig Church, Oz Fox, and David Zaffiro. They all appear on that album. And wow, there's a lot of Bloodgood guys there. So it was my thing, but it was cool working with my guys. And my wife also, Joyce, she's singing on there too. And then we go to the next album. Joyce is singing a little bit more. The guitar player, Paul Jackson from Bloodgood, and also Craig Church, who was in the Rock Theater with Bloodgood. So, there is the influence of Bloodgood everywhere I go, and I'm so blessed to have guys and my wife with me doing new music, because it's a new day.
Qual foi a importância de Darrell Mansfield na produção do primeiro álbum?
I just spoke to Darrell Mansfield just a couple days ago, and we reminisced about the first Bloodgood album. And he told me that he was so honored that he was a part of that. And I'm thinking, wow, we were so honored that he was our producer, because Darrell was a pioneer in Christian music. So I think, again, it was a God thing. I think that the Lord put us together, and the knowledge that Darrell brought was fantastic. Old school. He really knew how to get the best out of us. And I think that first debut album was pretty incredible for a first album. It just came out like bam. I think we sold 40,000 copies when it first released, and then it just went on from there. But yeah, it was a milestone in Christian metal. Thank you, Darrell. We love you very much.
Como você gostaria de ser lembrado no metal cristão?
The memory of me, I think, would be first and foremost that I was a man that loved Jesus, that I chased after him, and that I wanted to be like him. Even though, I'm a man and I fall short, but if anything, that would be the most precious thing, to be remembered as a man that loved God. And then the music will live on. It's worldwide. It's streamed. It's played in people's homes, and the message will go on. It's so incredible to me that there's all these songs out there with my voice on them, and that's good. But truly, I think being known as a man that loved Jesus is the greatest thing.
Neis, muito obrigado. Agora deixa uma mensagem para os inscritos no canal Agostinho's Music.
The music, the metal, the mission. I would say to all of you viewers, it's the music, the metal, the mission, Eraldo Agostinho. That is what you're doing. I mean, you're doing the same thing that the bands are doing. We're out there spreading the gospel, the good news that Christ died on a cross and rose on a third day so that we could be saved and that we could go to him instead of going somewhere without him. So I want to bless you viewers. I'm so thankful for Eraldo and allowing me to be on the show, and I hope to see you in Brazil. Come on out. I'm going to give you a big hug.
Que bom que você ficou até aqui. Agora comente aqui embaixo o nome da sua música preferida e do integrante preferido. Obrigado e até a próxima.